Hello, hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod. Where decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And welcome to week 2 of winter break. That's what I'm
Ding, ding,
calling
ding,
it.
ding, ding.
It's actually the winter now, rather than just cold. This week, we're going to talk about a card that Bruce and I decided together we would talk about because we love Planechase. If you haven't heard that enough, then you haven't been listening to our podcast.
I also decided that, by now some folks are probably wondering whether or not Bruce ever actually knows what ramp is. So I thought we would talk about a 2-mana rock that you probably aren't using in your deck.
Let me guess. It's 2 mana.
Yeah.
It taps for mana.
Yeah.
It's called Fractured Powerstone.
Dang, you guessed it.
Which means it also taps, and you can roll the planar die, but only as a sorcery. Because why would you want to? I mean, I guess I know why you'd want to activate it as an instant, but
they're just keeping it clean.
Yeah,
it's just cleaning up that part. The card is pretty straightforward, but there's something you need to keep in mind. For those of you who don't play a lot of Planechase, you roll the planar die. The first roll is free. Invariably, either something that you didn't want to happen happens, or nothing happens, which is probably something you didn't want to have happen. So you go to roll the die again, but this time it costs 1 mana. So you pay your 1 mana, and you roll the die, and nothing happens. And now you go to pay it again, and this time it costs 2. Well, you can tap the Fractured Powerstone instead, so essentially you're only paying 1 again, and roll the die. It also means that you could use you can roll the planar die later on, so you can pay the 2 mana instead of tapping Fractured Powerstone. And then the next turn, instead of tapping for 3, you can tap the Fractured Powerstone. Couple of issues: you're probably never going to do that because you're always hoping the next roll is the roll you're looking for. So why wouldn't you tap Fractured Powerstone instead of 2 mana? You're probably going to tap the Fractured Powerstone. So in essence, it's saving you 1 mana whenever you roll the planar die.
And that's if you want to roll the planar die.
A third time.
Right.
A lot of times you just want the mana.
Right.
I mean, I know that when we're playing Planechase games, I will almost always roll the free roll. But when it starts to cost, a lot of times I'm reluctant because I got other better things to do with my mana. So I hold off and I save the mana for those things instead of paying for more rolls of the planar die. I put this card in a bunch of my decks because I play a lot of Planechase, and I thought this will be good in those decks. And it's only a 2-mana rock. Most of the ones Wizards does now are all cost 3. The downside here, though, is that it only taps for colorless. So there are plenty of rocks out there that cost 2 and tap for a color, but this one doesn't.
And I would say, even so, like, how often do you play, say, Everflowing Chalice on 1, Like, pay 2, get out 1.
The only time you're doing that with the Chalice is if you have a way to add counters to the Chalice.
Right. I mean, even Everflowing Chalice paying 4, getting 2, like, that's, like, a pretty good rate. And, like, I've seen it done plenty of times, even without ways of adding counters. Those games that you're not playing Planechase, it's still a valid card in your deck.
Right, and that's what it comes down to. The benefit of the planar die is something that comes in every once in a while, and it, like I said, it only really matters if you're rolling a planar die for a third time on your turn. That doesn't happen as often as you might think. Most of your games are not going to involve Planechase, so when you look at the card, you have to say to yourself, this is 2 mana for a mana rock that taps for colorless. Is that worth it in my deck? Now for me, yeah, I'll take that. I regularly run 3 mana rocks that tap for something and then do something else. So oftentimes on turn 2, I don't have a play because I don't tend to run a lot of 2 mana rocks, barring, Fellwar Stone and a couple of the other, this and a Signet. But I like this. I like that. It only costs 2. It doesn't come into play tapped. You get to use it right away. There's a benefit to that I think can get underestimated. And you know what? It's different. Most of your opponents will never have seen this card.
Yeah.
They are not expecting this out of anybody's deck, especially if there's not a Planechase deck around. This is always kind of a surprise.
Yeah, and I think even with the downside that you had mentioned earlier where it doesn't produce any color, like how often are you in desperate need of that color? Like, unless you're playing a deck where it's only colored pips, which is not often, you can find a place to use colorless mana for generic, you know? And I think even beyond that, looking at the notes and rules for Fractured Powerstone, it says rolling the planar die this way doesn't count when determining the cost of the special action for rolling planar die. For example, if you roll the planar die twice in a turn, then activate Fractured Powerstone to roll it a third time, like you're talking about, rolling the planar die again after that will cost 2. So it's also still not incrementing. It's not adding to the cost of the next roll either.
Right.
So like you can still have that roll for 2 if you need it, if you're really trying to get away. And it's those cases that honestly, if you play a lot of Planechase, you know that plight of like, I just need one more roll, but like it's so expensive, you know? I think it's all of these things that kind of make it valuable in any deck that you would see play with Planechase in even half the games, because otherwise it taps for 1, and that's good enough, honestly.
It is. I mean, look, would I put this in my old Krond deck? No, because it was 3 green, 3 white. That was a pain. Would I put this in a 5-color deck? Yeah, man, that would be a tough one. But who's kidding who? Most of our decks are 2 and 3 color decks. You can put Fractured Powerstone in there. I think we can all agree Arcane Signet was a mistake to make. Wizards should not have made a 2-mana artifact that can tap for any color that your commander makes. It's too good. And it blocks off all of the other options. They could have done a 2-mana mana rock that taps for green, that taps for red, that taps for blue. They could have done it, pick a color in your commander's color range. It taps for that color. But they went whole hog and said, no, it's going to tap for everything all the time. And it's always going to be that good. They could have worked around it. But Fractured Powerstone still gets you that mana. It's just not a color. And I appreciate that's part of what makes Arcane Signet so good, but these are both 2-mana mana rocks. And honestly, Soul Ring into an Arcane Signet or Soul Ring into Fractured Powerstone, I'm taking either.
It's so infrequent that you have your commander without any sort of generic mana cost, that like in those cases that it does have generic mana cost, which is often, it is essentially the same as an Arcane Signet.
Right, and Commander Tax exists, and it's colorless. Most of the cards you're playing have colorless in them. Any Sapphire.
Generic, but
any Medallion.
Yeah.
All your blue spells cost 1 generic mana less. Well, those are really good cards because most of your cards cost some amount of generic mana. Fractured Powerstone is gonna fill that bill for you. It is just not that bad. I would not want every one of my mana rocks tapping for colorless, but this is a 2-mana mana rock, taps for colorless, and it's got a fun upside in those situations where you can cash in on it. I'll take that. I'm excited about that.
For as a big of a proponent as I am for 3-mana mana rocks, I'm glad this one's not 3, because I feel like the upside to it isn't enough to put it in every deck. But I feel like because of that second ability, it does just make it like a pretty good include in most decks, where you see fit. I mean, it's hardly even a question, Like there are a lot of mana rocks out there that you could question, like, do I actually want this in here? It does a thing that's kind of fun.
I think that this is a card that should be considered in your ramp package. I'm not saying it's going to make the cut every time. There are some decks that are way too highly tuned for this card to make the cut, but I think you need to consider it. I think this is a solid mana rock. It comes in at 2 mana. Oftentimes that's enough, and it's funky. Trust me, nobody you're playing against is going to have this card in their deck.
Yeah. Ebony Fly comes in tapped. It's 2 mana taps for a color or colorless.
Yeah.
The Diamond cycle all come in tapped to tap for a color. Guardian Idol, 2 mana, comes in taps for colorless.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. It's simple. The fact that it is 2 mana, comes in untapped. This could be an easy turn 1, like, turn 1 Soul Ring into this. Like, feels pretty good.
Right.
And it's a mana rock.
Simply put, are you running talismans in your deck? How many times are you taking a point of damage? 2?
Right.
It's just not happening that often. And if you're not taking a point of damage, it's just tapping for generic, and that's all this thing does. So I get why you would put the talisman in first, because you want to have access to the colors, even if it's going to take a point of damage. But you wouldn't put the talisman in if you're going to tap it for colored mana every single time. You just wouldn't do that. So, think about it. It is an option. I like it. This is not the best 2 mana rock. It's not. But it's damn good. And you do need to consider it. I mean, you should be thinking about it every time you're running mana rocks in your deck. It's cheap. It's creative. It's something that most people haven't seen. And you know what? If you find yourself in some Planechase games, you get a little bonus upside here. I like it.
Yeah, because there are just so few. Like, I'm looking at a list on managathering.com of the 2 mana rocks, and you've got some all-star hits like Arcane Signet, Powerstone, Cold Steel Heart. Cold Steel Heart comes in tapped, but it produces the mana, like you were saying.
Right. I mean, Thought Vessel's good too.
Right.
I like these cards. But like I said, it's not going to be the best. It's not going to be the best, but all of the cards we've mentioned are cards that are showing up in decks all the time. So throw it in there. What's the harm?
Thought Vessel you see all the time. Liquid Metal Torque you see fairly frequently. Prismatic Lens.
Right.
Mind Stone. The secondary ability is always secondary because you're not going to be using it 100% of the time.
Right.
And you never hear about Fractured Powerstone.
Nope. Because not enough people are playing Planechase.
Yeah. You got to change that, world. You got to get out there. But that's going to do it for us this week. Happy holidays,
Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all those things. Whatever you celebrate, appreciate you. But we'll be back next week with something cool, I'm sure. I'm sure one of us is going to cook up something tasty for the new year. We'll see you then. We're Temple of Falsepod. We're at X and Not Optimized. Better place. Sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, press that subscribe button. If you're not watching on YouTube, we talked about a lot of cards that we did not, read out. But we got those on the screen on YouTube. Go check it out. That's going to be it. Play some Magic for me, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait, before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter at falsepodmtg. Bruce is at ManaBurned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!